Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing / reviewing / analysing the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. For the first part of this video, if you haven't read the book, you are okay to stay and watch this. It's more going to be like my general thoughts, how the book fits in with the Hunger Games universe and my experience in the Hunger Games universe. Just general plot points that won't spoil anything for you. Okay, so overall I absolutely adored this book. I really wasn't expecting to because I haven't really read the Hunger Games in ages. So going back to this universe was really interesting to me. I used to be the biggest Hunger Games fan to the point where I actually had a Facebook fan page. I also went to the midnight showing of Mockingjay Part 2 with my friends and we watched Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2 back to back. So yeah, I was a huge fan. I also really like the Hunger Games movies. I think they did them really well. I think they adapted them the best they could be. Casting, the music, the scenes. So the book being a prequel, it's set 60 plus years before Katniss is even born, and it follows an 18-year-old President Snow and his role as a mentor in the 10th Hunger Games. The book is split into different parts, namely prior to the Hunger Games itself, and the aftermath / the consequences of the games. And the epilogue rounds the book off really well, to the point where I think that we don't really need any more of these books. I think it rounds off really well, ready to begin the actual Hunger Games books. That's all I can really say without spoiling it, so if you haven't read the book, please go now and come back after you've read it. I promise you'll enjoy it. I had a really good time. I just don't want you to spoil anything because, you know, there are some big plot twists that I want to speak about and some huge Easter eggs that I really want to discuss. So if you haven't read the book, please go and come back. Bye! Okay, hi guys. I first want to talk about the ending to the book. What the was that? Oh my god, like the whole last chapter, my jaw was on the floor. I could not believe what was happening. I literally thought Lucy Gray and Snow were endgame. I was so confused by their relationship, but in the end, I kind of shipped it. So when they ran away together, I was all for it. And then suddenly Snow is like, yeah, I'm gonna kill her. And she's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill him. And they had like a standoff. And oh my god, I was not prepared for that. And then suddenly he's dropped off at the Capitol and there's loads and loads of bombshells. Like the fact that it was actually Snow's father that had a massive hand in creating the games itself, and how Snow basically gets adopted by the Plinths at the end, like they traded their son for him, and Snow continues to eat the food from Ma just like nothing's happened, like he did not kill their son. Even though this really took me by surprise, I think it was the perfect ending because you can see Snow's next steps and you can see how he does become the president like the one that we see in Katniss's universe 60 years later, because you can see that he's going to be trained under Dr. Ghoul and he's going to become this monster with no feelings, and he speaks about how he wants to find a woman that he doesn't even like and marry, and he just wants to serve the Capitol. So I think the last chapter was really well written. In general, I thought the book was a bit slow to begin with, but I think it really picked up midway through. I also really liked the direct comparison between Katniss's point of view from District 12 and the life of being a district citizen to Snow's point of view as Capitol born. Okay, so the first plot twist for me was the fact that Tigress was Snow's cousin. I actually ended up rereading the tiny section in Mockingjay that Tigress is in, and she doesn't really do that much. She obviously aids Katniss and the Star Squad, lets them stay underground in her house, and then gives them a disguise, so then they go off to kill Snow. But apart from that, there's no real big giveaway to who she actually is. In The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, her relationship with Snow is really good, and they rely on each other to the point that Tigress actually ends up aiding Snow in the games, and then when he's sent to be a peacekeeper, Snow sends Tigress money to live in the house and keep the house going. So there's no real indication when their relationship is going to break down in the future, and I feel like Ballads ends and they still have a good relationship. But know that it does, because in the end Tigress is actually conspiring against her own cousin and helping Katniss and her squad overthrow the government. One thing I do want to bring up is how the hell do you pronounce any of these names? I could not cope with this. It was a total Hermione situation in that I was just sort of mumbling the name whenever it came up to Snow. I was like, said this, did this, because for the life of me, I had no idea how to pronounce his name. After a while, I decided to just say Cornelius, even though I knew it wasn't Cornelius and it didn't even look like Cornelius. That was the only name I could say in my head. The same with Sejanus. Again, I have no idea. I just started calling him Shaunus about halfway through because I just couldn't cope with Sejanus. That's not a name. Sejanus. I have no idea why she'd choose that. Fine calling him Shaunus. And then briefly a character actually enters who is called Shaunus. Well, if that's Shaunus, Sejanus really must be Sejanus. But he was just Shaunus for me the whole way through. Another thing was I found it really hard to picture what Snow looked like at the start. So I googled it and this image came up, and I don't know if it helped me or hindered me. I don't know, I just feel like Lucy Gray's such a catch, and do we think Snow deserves her looking like this? What gives him the audacity to have this hairstyle? Okay, some things that I really liked in the book. I really liked how you could see that the games were starting to become the games that we know in the present day with Katniss. This year is the first year that they involve mentors, and obviously we know that the mentors end up being the winning tributes of the district. It was the first year that they involved like an outer party to mentor each tribute in the games. Things like sponsors, that Snow actually came up with that idea, and the idea that you can send in gifts to the tributes in the arena, all these ideas to try and get the districts actively watching the games and more involved are things that obviously stayed and stuck into the games we know today. I thought it was really interesting how Snow sort of mentions that prior to this year, normally the tributes come to the capital and the next day they go into the arena and the games begin. And I liked that he said this year they were trying something different. They were having the interviews and they were trying to big up the tributes. Obviously this totally goes overboard, and by the 74th Hunger Games, there's the victory tour and makeovers and training sessions and hotels, and it's really good to see how this started and how it just blew up into the games that we read 60 years later. I must say, this book made me like wince and cringe a bit. Just the way that the tributes are treated. They're pushed into the zoo cage, they're not fed, some of them die before they even get to the arena. It's like a far cry from the treatment that they receive in the 74th and in the later Hunger Games as well. Obviously, neither sits right, because if you treat them like dirt, it's not humane. But then also, if you treat them like celebrities and then they end up killing each other anyway, that's equally not humane. So obviously there's no right way to do it, but I really enjoyed seeing the development between these Hunger Games that Snow's involved with to the ones that Katniss and Peter actually end up entering. I also thought it was really interesting that the games are held in the capital's old amphitheatre rather than the new modern arena. That's obviously been created with a different design and painstakingly every little detail, whereas this game is just in this desolate place that was bombed and what's left there, very much like they've just thrown these tributes in and left them to fight, which is so different to the games we know today. Okay, one of my favourite things about prequels and books that come out sort of like 5+ years later are the Easter eggs that authors put inside them that link to the main series. If you've watched my other videos, you'll know that I'm a huge Shadowhunters fan, and I really like how Cassie Clare puts in Easter eggs either in the short story books or in the prequels to the main stories or the ones that happen in the present day. So some of my favourite Easter eggs in the Ballads book mostly happen in District 12 when Snow is sent there over summer for his peacekeeping duties. Snow mentions the bakery in District 12 and how it's like a family bakery. You know, this is the Mellark family bakery, and it obviously comes down to Peter in the present day, so that was a nice little shout out to that. There's the whole thing about the Mockingjays and how Snow hates the Mockingjays, but he really hates them. I have never met a character that hates birds this much. This is mad. So think about how pissed he must have been when Katniss became the Mockingjay herself. He must have been fuming. Obviously Lucy Gray is part of the Covey and the musicians of District 12, and there's so many beautifully written songs in this book. Lucy Gray also sings the song that Katniss ends up singing to Rue as she's dying in the 74th Hunger Games. So it was really nice to see Lucy singing these songs. And this actually brings me nicely to a fan theory that I want to mention. So we find out that it was actually Lucy Gray who composed the Hanging Trees song, and it's one of the things that she sings when she teases Snow when he doesn't know where she is and he's shooting blindly. But the theory I want to talk about is the theory that Lucy Gray doesn't actually die. She goes back to District 12, back to the Seam, she settles down with someone, she has a child, and then that child has Katniss. So the theory is that Lucy Gray Baird is actually Katniss's grandmother. I feel like there's loads to back this up in the book, aside from the fact that Katniss knows the Hanging Tree song, and she also mentions how the song that she sings to Rue was a song that was passed down through her family and that her father taught her. I feel like Lucy Gray looks physically similar to Katniss as well, especially the long dark hair. And the ultimate Easter egg and clue to this theory is the fact that Lucy Gray actually picks up the Katniss plant. This really nice throwaway line when Clerk Carmine brings Lucy this Katniss plant and she mentions how it's a little too early yet, which I think is a joke by Suzanne Collins, sort of alluding to Katniss and how it's too early yet, how she's still 2 generations away. But I think this is the biggest clue to the fact that Lucy Gray does actually survive and ends up having kids that then have Katniss. Okay, some closing points. Even though I thought it started off a bit slow, I really enjoyed this book. I really do think it's a great companion novel to the Hunger Games series. I think the continuity was done really well. I don't think there's any plot holes or any that I could find anyway that sort of took anything away from the Hunger Games trilogy. And although I started to care for Snow, his actions in the end solidified the fact that I hate him, I hate everything he stands for, and I think that he's still a good enough villain in the Hunger Games trilogy. I was slightly apprehensive that by knowing Snow's background, we would grow to care for him and he wouldn't seem as villainous in the Hunger Games trilogy. I think that he's still a massive asshole and he's still a villain, and I don't think this book detracts from any of that in any way. Thank you guys so much for watching. I would love to hear what you thought of the book. Please leave your comments below. Remember to subscribe for more rants and analysis and reviews of my favourite YA fiction. Again, thanks for watching.